In the shadows of a war-torn Europe, a man emerged who would change the course of history forever. Adolf Hitler, a figure so polarizing that his name still evokes fear and fascination. How did he manage to captivate an entire nation, twisting their beliefs and emotions to orchestrate one of the most devastating wars in history? As we delve into the heart of his rise to power, we'll uncover the psychological tactics he employed, the propaganda that saturated the minds of millions, and the chilling charisma that allowed one man to manipulate a country into madness. What drove ordinary citizens to follow him blindly? And how did Germany transform into a nation steeped in hatred and destruction? Join us as we explore the dark genius of Hitler's mind and the gripping narrative of a society on the brink of collapse. The aftermath of World War I left Germany reeling, burdened with the weight of humiliation from the Treaty of Versailles. Economic despair swept across the nation, and political instability reigned supreme. The loss of territory, military restrictions, and crippling reparations created a sense of national shame. As the streets filled with disillusioned citizens, the once proud nation became a breeding ground for radical ideologies. Amidst the chaos, a charismatic figure began to rise. Adolf Hitler, a failed artist turned soldier, emerged from the shadows. He returned from the trenches of the Great War, embittered and vengeful. Promising to restore Germany to its former glory, he tapped into the collective psyche of a nation desperate for hope. The question lingered: how could one individual harness the anger and pain of millions to fuel a dangerous movement? But before we go further down this dark road, if you're new here, this channel exists to make sure history is never forgotten. Hit subscribe and join thousands who believe the past holds the answers to our present. Like this video if you think these stories need to be told. And drop a comment below. What do you think made ordinary people follow a man like Hitler? In 1920, Hitler joined the German Workers' Party, which would later morph into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party. From the beginning, he recognized the power of propaganda as a weapon. He was not just a man with a vision. He was a masterful orator who understood how to tap into the fears and aspirations of the masses. His speeches ignited a fire within the hearts of his listeners. By addressing their grievances and painting a vivid picture of a strong, resurgent Germany, he instilled a sense of purpose. The Nazi Party's platform was built on nationalism, anti-Semitism, and the promise of economic revival. As Hitler's rhetoric grew increasingly radical, so did his following, swelling from a few hundred to thousands. Each rally, each speech, was meticulously orchestrated, designed to amplify his influence and manipulate the public's perception. As Hitler's grip on the Nazi Party tightened, he recognized the importance of controlling the narrative. Joseph Goebbels, his minister of propaganda, became a key figure in this endeavor. Goebbels understood the psychological manipulation of mass media and crafted a propaganda machine that flooded the airwaves with messages glorifying the Aryan race while demonizing Jews and other minorities. Posters, films, and radio broadcasts depicted a romanticized vision of Germany's past. The message was clear: unite behind the Führer or perish. The repetition of slogans, the staging of grand spectacles, and the use of emotional imagery created an atmosphere of loyalty and fervor. Hitler knew that emotion, more than logic, would sway the hearts and minds of the populace. He turned ordinary citizens into fervent supporters, willing to overlook increasingly violent and discriminatory policies in exchange for a sense of belonging and purpose. By 1934, Hitler had solidified his power, but several threats loomed large within the Nazi hierarchy. The SA, or stormtroopers, led by Ernst Röhm, had become increasingly powerful and posed a challenge to Hitler's authority. Sensing the need to eliminate potential rivals, he orchestrated a brutal purge known as the Night of the Long Knives. On the night of June 30th, Hitler's forces executed Röhm and many other political adversaries. This ruthless display of loyalty and violence sent a clear message: dissent would not be tolerated. Hitler solidified his control over the party and the military, reinforcing the notion that he alone was the architect of Germany's destiny. This pivotal moment would further entrench the culture of fear and obedience within the nation, creating a climate where many citizens rationalized their complicity in the regime's actions. As Hitler's power grew, so did his image as Germany's savior. He became more than a political leader. He transformed into a messianic figure. The Führer was portrayed as the embodiment of the German spirit, leading the nation out of despair and toward a future of glory. This cult of personality was carefully crafted through staged appearances, heroic imagery, and a carefully curated public persona. Hitler presented himself as a man of the people, someone who understood their struggles and fought for their interests. The mass rallies were infused with a sense of unity and purpose, where citizens would chant his name in fervent adoration. In this atmosphere, questioning or dissent became unthinkable. Loyalty to Hitler became synonymous with loyalty to the nation itself. As a result, a dangerous loyalty formed, binding millions to a leader who would lead them down a dark path. Millions surrendered their judgment to one man's vision, and the world paid the price. If you want to understand how it happened and make sure it never happens again, subscribe. Every video on this channel is a reminder of what's at stake when we stop asking questions. Hit like if this story deserves to be heard, and tell me in the comments, do you think a cult of personality like this could happen today? In the midst of the economic revival, Hitler needed a scapegoat to unite the nation against a common enemy. The Jews, long marginalized, became the focal point of Nazi propaganda. Hitler's rhetoric painted them as the root of Germany's problems, accusing them of everything from economic sabotage to cultural decay. This systematic dehumanization allowed citizens to rationalize their hatred and violence against Jewish communities. Anti-Semitic laws stripped Jews of their rights, and propaganda fueled public resentment. In this climate of fear and division, many Germans turned a blind eye, choosing to embrace the narrative that positioned them as the victims of a grand conspiracy. Hitler's ability to redirect anger towards a minority group provided a unifying force that would ultimately lead to catastrophic consequences. With public support firmly in hand, Hitler turned his sights on expanding Germany's borders. The remilitarization of the Rhineland in 1936 was a pivotal moment that challenged the post-World War I order. Defying the Treaty of Versailles, Hitler gambled that the Western powers would not respond. His gamble paid off, emboldening him further. The annexation of Austria and the Sudetenland followed. Each act met with minimal resistance from Britain and France. The policy of appeasement allowed Hitler to continue his aggressive expansion, further solidifying his image as a strong leader. The question of how a nation so scarred by war could allow itself to be led into another conflict lingered in the air, as Hitler's charisma and manipulation steered Germany toward disaster. At the core of Nazi ideology was the notion of Aryan supremacy. Hitler propagated a vision of a pure, superior race destined to rule over others. This deeply flawed ideology was steeped in pseudoscience and historical manipulation. Hitler's regime promoted the idea that the Aryan race was responsible for all great achievements in civilization, while other races were depicted as inferior. The consequences were devastating, as millions were subjected to persecution and violence. Nazi policies institutionalized this belief, leading to horrific experiments and the dehumanization of entire populations. The irony lies in how a nation that once prided itself on enlightenment and progress could succumb to such barbarism, blinded by propaganda and manipulated to accept these horrific ideologies. As the war escalated, the true extent of the Nazi regime's brutality became evident. Concentration camps sprang up across Europe, where millions were imprisoned, tortured, and exterminated. The Holocaust, a systematic genocide, unfolded under the guise of racial purity. Hitler's manipulation extended beyond mere political power. It became a tool for mass murder. The world watched in horror as reports of atrocities began to emerge, yet many remained ignorant or in denial. The chilling reality was that ordinary citizens were complicit in these horrors, either through active participation or silence. The moral implications of this complicity haunt us to this day, raising uncomfortable questions about the nature of humanity and the ease with which people can be led astray. As World War II dragged on, the tide began to turn against Hitler. The initial victories were overshadowed by catastrophic losses. The failed invasion of the Soviet Union and the relentless Allied campaigns began to unravel the grip he had on Germany. In the face of mounting defeats and chaos, Hitler's mental state deteriorated. His decisions became increasingly erratic, driven by paranoia and delusion. The same manipulation that had once captivated a nation now faltered under the weight of reality. As cities fell and the German people faced starvation and despair, the illusion of invincibility shattered. The question remained, how could a man who once commanded such loyalty end up alone and feared, holed up in a bunker as the world closed in around him? Hitler's demise marked the end of a dark chapter in history, yet the legacy of manipulation continues to resonate. The ability to sway entire populations through fear, propaganda, and charisma remains a cautionary tale. As we ponder the question of how a nation could be led astray, we must confront the uncomfortable truths about human nature and the potential for darkness within us all. The echoes of Hitler's tactics can be seen in contemporary politics, where manipulation and divisive rhetoric threaten to repeat history. Understanding how Hitler captured and twisted the psyche of an entire nation is not just an academic exercise. It is a vital lesson in vigilance and accountability. The responsibility lies with each of us to recognize the signs of manipulation and to stand firm against the currents of division and hatred that threaten to rise again. As we conclude this exploration of Adolf Hitler's manipulation of an entire nation, we must remember the lessons learned from this dark past. History teaches us that complacency can lead to unimaginable horrors. It rests on our shoulders to ensure that such manipulation never happens again. By educating ourselves and others, we can recognize the signs of tyranny and stand against hatred in all its forms. The stories of those who suffered under Hitler's regime remind us of the human cost of manipulation. Let us honor their memory by fostering understanding, compassion, and a steadfast commitment to justice. If you found this documentary insightful, please like and subscribe for more content that delves into the depths of history and human behavior. Together, we can build a future guided by the lessons of the past.